Have you ever stumbled upon something so strange, so out of place, that it made you question everything you thought you knew about faith, life, or even the universe itself? Imagine this, an old attic, dust floating like tiny galaxies in a beam of light. A man walks in, searching for nothing special, maybe just an old notebook. But what he finds is a manuscript that was never meant to be read. Pages filled with inked thoughts that sound like they came from another world. Thoughts about faith, heaven, and something beyond the stars. Now here's the twist. Those words weren't written by some unknown dreamer. They were written by one of the greatest Christian minds in history, C.S. Lewis. And what this hidden manuscript reveals could change how you see God's creation forever. But before we uncover that secret, let me ask you something. Have you ever looked up at the night sky and wondered if God made more than just us? If maybe somewhere far beyond the stars there are other creations, other beings who also know His name? Hold that thought, because what Lewis wrote decades ago may hold an answer we've all been afraid to ask. If you're new here, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit that bell icon, because this journey is going to take us far beyond what you expect. And trust me, by the end of it, you won't just be amazed by what Lewis believed, you'll be inspired by what it means for your own faith. Now let's start where all great discoveries begin, with curiosity. C.S. Lewis was a man who wrestled deeply with questions of faith, reason, and imagination. Most people know him as the author of the Chronicles of Narnia, where talking lions and magical worlds point us to deeper spiritual truths. But few realize how much Lewis's mind stretched beyond the visible universe. In private letters, he once hinted, "If there are other worlds with other creatures, they too may serve the same Creator." That line, tucked away in correspondence, was easy to overlook. But now, historians claim to have found something far more shocking. A hidden manuscript, believed to have been written before Out of the Silent Planet, his first science fiction story. In it, Lewis supposedly explored what it would mean if intelligent beings existed beyond Earth, not as threats, but as witnesses to God's vast glory. Imagine that! A Christian writer daring to believe that the heavens might truly declare the glory of God, in more ways than we ever imagined. But here's where the story takes a turn. The manuscript wasn't just a story. It was a confession, a raw, personal wrestling with the question, if aliens exist, would they need salvation? Would Jesus die for them too? Lewis's pen trembled over that thought, not out of doubt, but awe. Because if God is infinite, then His mercy must also be infinite, large enough to stretch beyond stars, beyond galaxies, beyond every realm of creation. And yet, this question leads to another one, a harder one. What if God created other worlds, not fallen like ours, but still pure, still holy? Wouldn't that mean that somewhere out there are creatures who never sinned, who never needed saving? It's a staggering thought, one that might make us uncomfortable. But doesn't the Bible itself hint at unseen worlds? In Colossians 1:16, Paul writes, "For by Him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible." Visible and invisible. Could Lewis have taken that verse more literally than anyone realized? This lost manuscript seems to suggest so. It said that Lewis described a race of beings who never fell, who still walk in perfect communion with their Creator, their hearts untouched by pride. If that doesn't sound like heaven's echo, what does? But what if this wasn't fiction? What if Lewis was writing about something he truly believed God revealed to him? That's where the discovery becomes truly breathtaking and controversial. Now pause for a moment. Think about your own faith. Have? You ever been afraid to ask questions? Maybe someone told you, don't think too deeply about that, or just have faith. But faith isn't the absence of questions, it's the courage to ask them while still trusting the one who holds the answers. And that's exactly what C.S. Lewis did. He didn't fear mystery, he walked into it. So here's what I want you to comment below. Write this: faith isn't afraid of the unknown. Because that's the truth Lewis lived by, and it's the truth we need to remember in a world that's always afraid of mystery. But the deeper we look into this manuscript, the more one question burns brighter than all the rest. What if the story of salvation isn't limited to earth? If Jesus is Lord of all creation, what does that truly mean? And what if, just what if, Lewis knew something we don't? When the scholar who discovered the manuscript first opened its faded leather cover, he said it smelled like time and thunder. The ink was cracked, the words uneven, almost as if Lewis himself had written them in a trembling rush, like he couldn't get them out fast enough. And what those pages described was unlike anything in his published works. It wasn't fantasy, it wasn't fiction, it was a meditation, a conversation between Lewis and God about the vastness of redemption. Lewis wrote, "If Christ be the Lord of all worlds, then his act upon one small planet must echo through all creation. The wood of our cross may be the center of 1,000 silent songs among the stars." Stop there for a second. Let that line sink in. 1,000 silent songs among the stars. Could it be that he was imagining salvation as something cosmic, something echoing through galaxies, not just confined to human history? Now, before we dive deeper, if you're feeling stirred right now, if something inside you says there's more to God's story than we've dared to believe, then pause this moment and subscribe, because here at LWN, we dive into the hidden depths of faith that others overlook. And if this topic moves your heart, comment below. God's glory has no limits. Let's flood the comments with that reminder. Now back to the story. Lewis was no stranger to exploring other worlds. His space trilogy, especially Out of the Silent Planet, was more than sci-fi. It was theology wrapped in imagination. He described Mars, or Malacandra, as a world unfallen, where creatures still honored their maker. Earth, by contrast, was the silent planet, cut off from the divine harmony because of sin. But this newly found manuscript went further. It described why Lewis believed such worlds must exist. He wrote, "It is not the greatness of space that humbles me, but the thought that my Redeemer may have other sheep beyond the fold of men." That phrase, other sheep, feels hauntingly familiar, doesn't it? Because Jesus himself said it. In John 10:16, he declared, "I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice." Now, most theologians interpret that as Gentiles, the non-Jewish believers who would come into the kingdom. But Lewis, he wondered if the verse might be even wider, even wilder in meaning. He wasn't saying aliens would replace us. He was saying, what if God's creativity doesn't stop at human imagination? What if his love paints on canvases we haven't even seen yet? And here's where things turn from curiosity to revelation. In one passage of the manuscript, Lewis wrote about a dream. He described seeing a sea of light, each point a world, each world a heart, and every heart beating the same name. When he awoke, he realized maybe God had given him a glimpse of the scope of his kingdom. And doesn't that sound familiar to Revelation 5:13? "Then I heard every creature in heaven and on earth, and under the earth, and on the sea, and all that is in them, saying, To him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be praise and honor and glory and power forever and ever." Every creature, not just humans, every creature. Lewis never claimed certainty. He wasn't proclaiming new doctrine. He was simply overwhelmed by the majesty of a God who might love infinitely more than we can imagine. But not everyone was ready for that kind of wonder. The notes show that Lewis intended to share these reflections in a theological essay titled Christ Beyond the Stars, but he never published it. Some scholars believe his closest friends, perhaps Tolkien among them, advised him to keep it hidden. After all, in the 1940s, the idea of a Christian talking about life beyond Earth could have shaken the faith of many. Yet the truth buried in those words is deeply biblical. God is bigger than our comfort zones. His story stretches beyond our comprehension. Think about it. When Job questioned God, what did the Lord reply? He didn't answer directly. He said, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me, if you understand." Job 38:4. In other words, there's more to creation than you could ever grasp. Lewis understood that. He didn't fear the unknown. He saw it as holy territory, a place where wonder and worship meet. And maybe that's what this whole manuscript is about. Not aliens as science fiction, but aliens as symbols of God's endless imagination. Because if the universe really is filled with life, then every star could be a stage for God's glory. Every world could be another verse in His eternal song. But what if there's more to it than symbolism? What if Lewis's dream wasn't just imagination, but divine inspiration? What if the idea of creatures still walking in harmony with God isn't fantasy, but prophecy? This is where the discovery grows even stranger. Scholars say one of the last lines in the manuscript reads, "If man be the only fallen race, then all others must watch with tears at our redemption, singing joy for the mercy they have never needed." What a thought, that there could be beings who look upon the cross not as their rescue, but as their reminder of perfect obedience. That somewhere, beyond our telescopes, there are hearts that have never known rebellion, only reverence. It's humbling, isn't it? To realize that in all our pride, all our technology, all our search for life beyond Earth, God might already have it all in His plan, and that He chose us, not because we're the center of the universe, but because even our brokenness could reflect His glory. You see, Lewis wasn't trying to make God smaller by imagining aliens. He was trying to make our understanding of God bigger. And maybe that's exactly what we need right now. Because in a world obsessed with proving or disproving, with arguing and doubting, we've forgotten the beauty of awe. The childlike wonder that says, "God, I don't understand everything, but I trust that you do." So let me ask you, when was the last time you looked at the stars and simply worshipped? Not because you understood what was out there, but because you knew who made it. If that thought moves you, comment this below. My wonder belongs to God. Because sometimes that's the purest kind of faith. The kind that doesn't need all the answers, just the awe. But as breathtaking as these writings are, there's one part of the manuscript that even the scholars couldn't explain. A section where Lewis described something he saw. Something that doesn't quite fit any theology or literature we know. Something that might just rewrite what we think he believed. The section came near the end of the manuscript, barely legible. The ink faded like an echo left in time. Scholars say Lewis's handwriting grew uneven there, as though his thoughts were racing faster than his pen could follow. What he described wasn't theory, it wasn't philosophy, it was a vision. He wrote, "I saw a sky alive with movement, not of wind or cloud, but of light. Countless eyes shone in the distance, each one fixed upon a center I could not see. And then I knew they were watching him." Who were they? Lewis never said outright, but his next line sent chills through everyone who read it. "Not all who watch the Lamb stand upon the earth." That's when the manuscript stopped reading like theology and started feeling like testimony, like something he had experienced. Now, before we go further, if you've ever had a moment that made you question the boundaries of reality, if you've ever felt God's presence so vividly that it made the world around you fade, then hit the like button, because that's the heart of what we're exploring today. The God who moves beyond reason, beyond science, beyond sight. And comment below, "Lord, open my eyes to your wonder," because this next part might just change the way you see your faith. In his vision, Lewis described seeing beings shaped in light, neither flesh nor spirit, yet both. They weren't angels as we imagine them. They were witnesses, observers of redemption. He wrote, "They sing not for their salvation, but for ours." That one line feels like a direct echo of Luke 15:10, where Jesus says, "There is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents." But Lewis went further. He described the sound of their singing as so vast it could be mistaken for silence, as though the entire cosmos was humming with the music of mercy. It's strange, isn't it, how even silence, when filled with divine presence, can sound like praise. But what Lewis saw next was even more astonishing. He wrote of a great light like a sun that did not burn, but healed. And in that light he saw a figure, a man. He didn't describe his face, only his presence. He stood between worlds, and every eye that saw him called him by a different name, yet all meant the same word, love. Now pause right there. Let's just breathe that in. A Savior known across creation, not just in human history, but throughout all existence. Could that be possible? Could the love of Christ truly stretch beyond earth itself? In Ephesians 3:18-19, Paul prayed, "That we may have strength to comprehend the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge." Lewis may have taken that prayer literally, because in this vision he seemed to be shown that Christ's love is not confined to our planet. It fills the very fabric of the universe. But here's the twist. After that vision, Lewis wrote a single haunting sentence. If such glory exists, then our smallness is not our shame, but our calling. Think about that. We spend our lives feeling insignificant, tiny specks in an endless universe. Yet Lewis suggests the opposite. We are significant because we are the ones through whom grace is revealed. Maybe, to all of creation, Earth isn't the forgotten corner of the cosmos. It's the altar where love became flesh. And doesn't that fit perfectly with Scripture? In 1 Peter 1:12, we read that even the angels long to look into the mystery of salvation. They watch in awe as God's plan unfolds through humanity. So maybe Lewis was simply seeing what heaven already sees. Creation watching redemption play out on this small blue planet. And if that's true, then the hidden manuscript isn't really about aliens at all. It's about perspective. It's about realizing that we're part of something so much bigger than we imagined. But what makes the story even more emotional is what happened next. After recording his vision, Lewis added a small note, barely 2 lines. "This is not for publication, only for prayer." It's as if he knew the world wasn't ready, as if he feared that people would focus on the aliens and miss the awe. Because the truth isn't that C.S. Lewis believed in aliens. It's that he believed in a God so vast, so endlessly creative, that aliens wouldn't even surprise him. He believed in a Redeemer who doesn't fit in the boxes we build around religion or reason. He believed that mystery itself is sacred, because mystery keeps us humble. And maybe that's what this whole discovery is. Don't shrink your faith to the size of your understanding. Don't worship a God small enough to fit inside your logic. Faith is bigger than answers. It's built on trust. And the God who made galaxies isn't asking you to understand everything. He's asking you to believe in Him despite everything. Lewis once wrote in his essay, The Weight of Glory, "It is a serious thing to live in a society of possible gods and goddesses, to remember that the dullest person you meet may one day be a creature which, if you saw it now, you would be strongly tempted to worship." That's not fantasy, that's perspective. It's a reminder that the spark of eternity burns inside every soul. So what does this hidden manuscript prove? Maybe not that Lewis believed in aliens, but that he believed in limitless love. A love wide enough for every world, every being, every heart that calls out for its creator. And that brings us back to Jesus, the one who left heaven for us. If His love could cross the infinite distance between divinity and humanity, then surely it can reach beyond stars, beyond galaxies, beyond every mystery still unseen. So maybe tonight, when you look up at the sky, you'll see it differently, not as emptiness, but as a cathedral of wonder. Every star a candle lit by God's hand. Every silence a hymn waiting to be heard. And when that wonder fills you, let it lead you not to questions, but to worship. Because the same God who holds the universe holds you. If that truth touches your heart right now, write this in the comments below. The same God who holds the stars holds me. Because sometimes that's all we need to remember. That we're not forgotten in the vastness of creation, we're chosen within it. But there's still one last page, one final note from Lewis that scholars call the closing whisper. It's short, mysterious, and unlike anything else in his writings. And its message might be the most powerful revelation of all. When the researcher reached the final page of the manuscript, it wasn't written in ink. It was engraved, lightly, almost invisibly, into the paper itself, as though the pen had pressed harder than intended. And in that faint inscription, beneath all the cosmic imagery and celestial wonder, were just a few words, words that carried the quiet weight of eternity. C.S. Lewis had written, "He is nearer than light and older than stars." That was it. No grand ending, no explanation. Just that sentence, simple, intimate, trembling with truth. And maybe that's how it was meant to be. Because after exploring the farthest reaches of imagination, after wondering about worlds and angels and infinite creations, Lewis's final thought was not about distance, but closeness. Not about what's out there, but about who's right here. He is nearer than light, older than stars. That line sounds like poetry, but it's really a confession of faith. A reminder that no matter how vast the universe may be, the God who holds it together isn't far from us. In Acts 17:27, Paul says, He is not far from each one of us. And maybe that's what Lewis wanted the world to remember, that even if there are 1,000 other worlds singing His praise, His heart still beats for you, personally, intimately, eternally. Because the wonder of creation isn't meant to make us feel small, it's meant to make us feel seen. Let's pause here. Think about your life for a moment. The loneliness you felt, the prayers that seemed to echo into silence, the nights when you looked up at the stars and wondered if God even noticed you. He does. The one who commands galaxies is the same one who listens to your heartbeat. The same one who left heaven to walk among us, to eat, to weep, to suffer, to die, and to rise again, so that nothing in heaven or earth could ever separate you from His love. Lewis may have written about other worlds, but his real discovery was this. The miracle of God's presence is not just that He rules the stars. It's that He chooses to dwell in hearts. If that truth moves you, write this in the comments. He is nearer than light. Because that phrase isn't just poetic, it's prophetic. It's the very essence of the gospel. And maybe that's why this manuscript was hidden for so long. Maybe Lewis knew the world wasn't ready to read about a God that big and a love that personal. Maybe he understood that before we could look to the stars, we first needed to look inside, to see how the same Creator who shaped the universe also shaped our souls. In his other writings, Lewis often spoke of longing, a yearning for something beyond this world, what he called joy. Not mere happiness, but a deep homesickness for heaven. He wrote, "If I find in myself desires which nothing in this world can satisfy, the only logical explanation is that I was made for another world." And perhaps that longing is the same pull that drew his imagination toward the heavens, the same pull that draws us when we stare at the night sky, knowing instinctively that there's more. More than science can measure, more than our words can hold, more than our eyes can see. Because deep down, the stars aren't calling us away from God, they're calling us toward Him. They're reminders that eternity is real, and that our story doesn't end here. But let's be honest, sometimes it's easier to look for mystery out there than to face the one right here, inside our hearts. The mystery of grace, the mystery of forgiveness, the mystery that God still chooses broken people like us to carry His light. That's the real revelation of Lewis's hidden manuscript. Not that he believed in aliens, but that he believed in a limitless Creator who still chooses to reach into limited lives. And maybe that's the message for you today. Maybe you've been searching for signs, wondering if God is real, if He's listening, if your life means anything in the grand expanse of everything. Hear this: you matter. You are not lost in the vastness. You are loved. Lewis saw the stars and thought of the Savior. You can do the same. When you feel small, remember, you are small like a seed, not like dust. Small things, when placed in divine hands, grow into eternal things. Jesus once said in Matthew 13:31-32, "The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. Though it is the smallest of all seeds, when it grows, it becomes the largest of garden plants." So even your smallest faith, your quietest prayer, your single step toward God, it matters in ways beyond what you can see. And perhaps that's what Lewis's final words meant. He is nearer than light. Light travels across billions of miles to touch our world, but God's presence crosses no distance at all. He's already here, in your thoughts, in your breath, in your longing. So when you gaze up at the stars tonight, don't ask, "Is anyone else out there?" Ask instead, "Lord, help me see you here." Because when you do, the vastness of the universe stops feeling empty, it starts feeling sacred. And maybe that's the legacy Lewis wanted to leave behind. Not proof of aliens, not a new theology, but a reminder of divine nearness. That every mystery, whether written in the sky or hidden in a forgotten attic, points us back to the same truth. We are loved by the one who made it all. So let's make this moment personal. Close your eyes for a second and whisper, "You are near, Lord." Because sometimes faith isn't about knowing, it's about remembering. And the hidden manuscript that once revealed the vastness of creation has, in the end, revealed something even greater, the tenderness of the Creator Himself. If you felt that nearness tonight, if something in your heart stirs as you listen, comment below the words, "I am not alone in His universe." Because that's what C.S. Lewis discovered in his secret writings, and what you and I can rediscover right now. That even across eternity, across galaxies and light years, across silence and mystery, God is nearer than light and older than stars. And He has never stopped reaching for you.